Well, I'd very much like to thank the organizers, particularly the Champalimaud president, Leonor Beleza, and the Brazilian ex-president, Fernando Henrique Cardoso, for their kind invitation to participate in this unusual conference. I also want to thank Andrew Tasker, who has been really key in helping with a lot of logistics for me personally. I've had the privilege of visiting this center a number of times before, mostly for family reasons, but I have to say that the program of today and tomorrow makes this visit particularly special. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of the meeting. I've enjoyed the previous comments, and I'm particularly looking forward to getting a chance to learn from the other participants and guests at this event. Now, the topic of this afternoon's session is medicine and medicinal research, medical research, 100 years from now. And as the other speakers have said, this is a challenging topic. And for me, in part it's challenging. I'm not a physician, so I don't practice medicine. But also, again, as we've heard already, 100 years from now is a long time. And it's really impossible to imagine anything about what life will likely be like in 100 years. And I have to say, I can't even confidently predict what my research laboratory or even my daughter might be doing in a few years. So 100 years is tough. Having said that, I thought one way to begin would be looking not forward, but rather backwards. What about 100 years ago? What were medicine and medical research like 100 years ago? And this slide shows in part what was new in medicine then: blood types, insulin, chemical neurotransmission. And if we now fast forward to today, there were things that were not even a glimmer of understanding 100 years ago that today are history and so well established they're completely accepted in medicine and medical science. All of molecular biology, DNA, the genetic code, DNA sequencing, steroids, diuretics, organ transplants, all of these are new within the last century. Both the state of knowledge and the state of technology 100 years ago made it impossible to envision then what today is. And so I'd like to emphasize not only that, but the fact about how rapidly this knowledge is changing. We not only are learning more today than ever before, but we're learning it at an ever-increasing rate. So extrapolating into the future, the one prediction I'm really confident about making today is that we will know far more in 100 years relative to what we know today than what we know today is relative to what we knew 100 years ago. Okay, so having said that, what do I envision? I'd like to break down my answer into 4 subtopics: biomedical science, medicine, healthcare, and society. And I'll start with biomedical science. I believe that biomedical science is poised for a revolution. There will be unprecedented growth in understanding and in the potential, importantly, for us to apply that understanding for the betterment of humanity. And I thought I'd exemplify my talks by focusing on 2 of the areas of interest in this institution: cancer biology and neuroscience. These 2 fields are at very different stages of understanding. We know an enormous amount about the biological bases of cancer. By contrast, we understand very little about the biological bases of neurologic and neuropsychiatric disease. An avalanche of novel cancer therapeutics is being driven mostly by 2 major scientific breakthroughs. First, the Human Genome Project has enabled the large-scale discovery of gene mutations responsible for cancer growth, and this kind of discovery has led to a targeted and personalized approach to attacking cancer based on knowing the precise genes that are abnormal in a particular patient's cancer. Secondly, scientists have learned how to harness a patient's own immune system to fight his or her cancer. There are revolutionary new cancer drugs, and they have been built upon 5 decades of intense, fundamental scientific research with major investments from the public sector, and I know best the investments from the U.S. National Institutes of Health. There has been a literal war on cancer, and the success of that war, in my view, has been a success of fundamental research. It's the understanding of fundamental aspects of biology, of genes and gene function, and cells and cell functions that has led to the progress in cancer therapeutics. Now, having said that, everything isn't solved. There still are problems in cancer, resistance. Many patients show resistance to therapeutics, and that resistance can be very difficult or impossible to overcome. So there are things that are left to solve and do. Nonetheless, I think the future for cancer biology is relatively easy to predict. Cancer, and I should say more precisely cancers, because cancer is not a single clinical entity. It is many distinct disorders in many ways. Cancer will no longer be a disease of major impact long before 100 years from now. So what about neuroscience and neurologic and neuropsychiatric disorders? Here, the current picture is less positive, but I want to stress the need is enormous. Consider mental illness. A recent study of 30 European countries, including all of the EU and Portugal itself, a recent study indicated that in a typical year, 35% of the population suffers from clinical mental illness. The economic burden of brain disease is unimaginable. The estimate for Alzheimer's disease in the US alone for the period from 2010 to 2050 has an economic cost of $20 trillion. Trillion dollars. Major depression causes the single greatest economic burden of all human diseases. The needs for brain science, understanding, and application are absolutely enormous, and yet we're not there. Why the difference between cancer and brain? First, the brain is complicated. We all know that, but that's not the only reason, and it may not even be the major reason. I think another reason is that fundamental brain research, the kind of research that will lead to real discoveries, that will lead to breakthroughs in our understanding of the basic mechanisms of brain function, brain development, brain organization, it's been woefully underfunded. So what do I see for the future? If, and I stress if, research in neuroscience is supported the way I believe it should be supportive, I see vast opportunities in the field of neuroscience, and I expect that by 2115, we will have a complete understanding of the brain, how it forms, how it functions, and why it goes wrong in neurodegenerative and neuropsychiatric disorders. And this understanding will extend from molecules to cells to circuits to the entire brain. And the greatest mystery of all time, in my view, the functioning of the human mind, will be understood at the level of mechanism. So what if we look at biomedical science beyond cancer and neuroscience? There clearly will be many revolutions. One, I believe, will continue to be in an exploding field today, genomics, the study of all genes in an organism. I envision that genomics will be a very different field in 100 years, as then we will be able not only to read genomes, A, T, G, C, and so on, but to understand them. And let me exemplify what I mean by understanding. I recently heard a talk from Craig Venter, who's one of the scientists involved in revealing the human genome sequence. Craig says that he has software today that can look at the DNA sequence of a human being and generate a computer reconstruction of that individual's face, okay? Imagine what other information is in our DNA and what we will be able to learn by reading our genomes in 100 years. So now, how will all of this biomedical science impact medicine? First and foremost, it will be integrated, the science, with new technologies. Now, we can't say, and all of the speakers have already said, we can't say what the unimaginable technologies of tomorrow will be. But what we can say is that there are some technologies today that are unquestionably going to play a part in the revolution of change to come. And if we look at these technologies, we'll just go through a list, and there are many more that could be here. Genome editing, exemplified now by the CRISPR-Cas9 area, which is taking biomedical and biological sciences by storm. Synthetic biology, in which novel devices, systems, machines are constructed from biological materials. For example, today we have computing devices that are made out of DNA. Wearable devices, Fitbits, and other things of that sort. Nanosensors, which can assess physiological properties from inside the body on a very microscopic level. Virtual reality, we've heard about earlier today. Robots, which can perform increasingly complex tasks. Nanobots, which are nanoparticle robots, which go into the body and do tasks inside the body as they circulate through. Avatars, which are non-biological copies of a person that actually can do tasks that that person otherwise would do. We've heard a moment ago about man-machine interfaces, which allow humans to communicate with and via machines. So, for example, you think, and a machine picks up a glass in response to your thought. Cyborgs, which consist of a mix of animal and machine components. And last but not least on this list, enchanted objects. And let me say what I mean by enchanted objects. This term was invented by David Rose, an entrepreneur and futurist at the MIT Media Lab. And he coined the term enchanted object based on something in The Hobbit, namely Frodo's sword, Sting. Okay, so what is Sting? Sting is a great sword, wonderful for doing things swords are supposed to do, but Sting is also enchanted. It has the ability to detect imminent danger, and if there is danger, it glows blue. So what's an enchanted object today in the real world that's impacting medicine? I'll give you one example. There are many. This slide shows an object known as a GlowCap. It's used to close a pill container. It's like a standard child-proof cap, but it has some additional features. It connects to the internet. It provides the patient with a reminder to take the medicine. It sends out weekly reports. And if a refill prescription is due, it lets you know, okay? It was used in a trial for the drug Lipitor, which is used to control cholesterol levels, and the GlowCap increased patient compliance from 50% to 85%. Compliance in the pharmaceutical industry is a major issue. A simple enchanted object like this made a dent. So technologies like these and the others that I mentioned earlier are going to be combined with a variety of other things, including vastly increased understanding of human genetics. But another really key component will be big data, the ability to acquire and analyze vast amounts of digital data. And what's going to change is that this acquisition will be real time. And furthermore, I believe this acquisition will be to larger and larger cohorts, ultimately encompassing essentially the entire globe. Real-time data from around the globe. And that combination will empower an area today labeled precision medicine. And the goal of precision medicine is to integrate information about an individual's genes, environment, and lifestyle, and compare those data to the data from individuals around the world, and in that way make the generalizations, the predictions, and define the treatments. I anticipate that computational methods will have another impact, and that's to change the focus of a physician from an organ, think cardiologist, to the entire body as a whole. And such a revolution is really a change, because for more than 2,500 years, the approach has been focus on the part, not the whole of the body. So now let's go beyond medical science and medicine. and really think about what matters. What matters is, in this context, healthcare. Healthcare is more than medicine. Medicines treat disease. The goal of healthcare should be to prevent disease so that you don't ever need a medicine to treat it. And I'm confident that in 100 years, healthcare will have transitioned from reactive to proactive. Instead of treating patients with expensive interventions, the focus will be on keeping people healthy. And the focus will extend from individuals to populations. And this will be based on a field that today is known as population health. And let me exemplify population health with a program that's offered by the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. Hospital teams go to areas in the Boston area to address issues of diet, of exercise, and drug abuse. And I'll give you one example, drug abuse. Lights are turned on brighter and more broadly at night. Consequence, drug sales. Illicit drug sales have gone down. Consequence, level of addiction has similarly decreased. Turn down levels of addiction simply by turning on lights. That's population health science. There are many, many other examples. In addition, incentives in the healthcare industry will become aligned, and the goal for all will become positive health outcomes. Fee-for-service models, which are there particularly in the U.S., physicians and drug companies both get paid for providing rather than for treating and curing. Fee-for-service models will disappear, and instead payments will be based upon positive health outcomes. The patient will become the consumer, and choices the patient will have will be made in just the same way an individual chooses what coffee to drink, or what movie to go see, or where to go on vacation. And these choices will be informed by access to information via the internet, or as we heard earlier, by whatever it is that follows the internet. The need to be efficient will lead to an alignment of incentives, and the now mostly separate sectors of the healthcare industry will be integrated. Payers, governments, and insurance companies will become integrated with providers, hospitals, and other caregivers, and with pharmaceutical and medical devices, so that together all can most effectively do what has to be done, which is make for a healthier population. At the societal level, oops, I've said all of that. At the societal level, healthcare will be delivered globally. Already, governments are realizing that global health is crucial, not only for moral and ethical reasons, which it is, but also because of economic and security concerns. Think Ebola. If Ebola had gotten loose around the world, the economic consequence would have been vast. Think about inequalities. We've heard from a number of speakers already today about health inequalities and other inequalities in the world. Inequalities in health can lead to economic inequalities, which in turn can lead to social unrest. One wants a healthy global world. And the importance of global health is now being vigorously promoted by the World Health Organization. I had the pleasure 1 month ago to talk with the president of the World Health Organization, Jim Kim. And Jim's major goal is to persuade the governments of the most powerful countries in the world that for economic and security reasons, they must work together to put in the resource to alleviate global inequalities in health. And my hope is that this will happen, but my hope goes beyond that. Because I hope as governments and societies realize the importance of that kind of endeavor, they also will realize two additional things. First, improvements in health will be driven by advances in fundamental science. Secondly, policy decisions by governments, be they about health, climate change, or energy, will be driven by scientific knowledge. For these reasons, I predict, and maybe I should really say I hope that by 2115 there will be universal agreement among society and governments that a top priority for humanity will be the funding of fundamental scientific research. So in short, I anticipate major changes in the world of medicine, changes that will be driven by revolutions in science, technology, and most importantly, wisdom. I am more confident about the science and technology than I am about the wisdom, but I will try to be optimistic. Nonetheless, we've heard some philosophy already today. I would like to quote a famous philosopher to end in a cautionary note that was captured about predicting the future by a famous New Yorker who was a catcher for the New York Yankees, Yogi Berra. And what Yogi said was, it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.